So what happens when an ex-PGA pro from Iowa says, hey, build me some clubs? What do? Let's find out. Welcome back to the Mick Golf Shop. Jim McCleary. We're back in the shop, right? And we took the 1 week vacation and it was well worth it, and we are absolutely busy. And we're putting together a set of clubs for Larry out of Iowa. Go Hawks. All right. And Larry's quite the golfer, and he's been talking back and forth with us about building a set of Taylormade 790s. And the Taylormade 790s look something like that. All right, so let's talk about the 790s. 790s are definitely squarely and quite right in the middle of the player's distance category. All right. So what does the player's distance category mean? So, and Larry is pretty much, if you look for the definition of a guy and you see this fella, that's him. So what it is, back in the day when Larry was a younger man, he was one heck of a ball striker. Back in the day, you basically played a certain style club, thin top lines, no offset, small soles, that kind of stuff. Very, very strong clubs. Well, Father Time catches up. However, you still have that same kind of look that you want and this, that you have to see. And when you start getting distance models, they tend to show up with a lot of offset. Well, that didn't sit right with a bunch of these guys. And so what happens is they give you a player's iron look, larger blade, a lot less offset, stronger lofts, right? The player's distance category, which tend to fit more than just those folks, okay? There's a lot of people out there that will fit into this category. It's because they're very forgiving clubs. They just don't, and this for that guy or gal that doesn't need a whole lot of offset. And this is a real popular category right now. And that's what the 790 fills, all right? And no, it's not a blade, all right? There's a lot of these out there. It's a hollow body, right? It's a hollow body. So basically a forged club, very, very forgiving on the outside. Then they put this cap on the back. And where you see right about here, right about where that gray line is, there's a line of tungsten. And again, the tungsten is to lower the center of gravity so that it gets under the ball, so you get these higher launch angles for a stronger lofted club, hence the distance. Now you have to have that trade-off. When you get a stronger loft, spin tends to come down, so you get what you do is you get under the center of gravity of the golf ball, so you get higher launch, so that's your trade. So what TaylorMade's done in between all of that, because the face is apparently very thin, they filled it full of what they would call speed foam. All right, I have basically come up with my own terminology for anybody that fills it full of goo, and I'm going to call it iguana spit, and that's what we're going to call it going forward. And so it's filled full of the speed foam. And what it does is two things. One, it supports the face, and the other one, it provides a softer feel. So if maybe this thing might be a little harder even in its forging, but it being thin, it needs a little bit of support, and then when the speed foam's in there, it reduces some vibration. So that's what we're going for. It also has what I would call a medium-large sole, right? A medium-large sole, and it has what they would call a speed slot, and it's filled full of a rubbery plastic so it doesn't get dirt on the inside. Now, the strange thing here with this one is they came with the ferrules already on them. All right, it came with the ferrules already on them. Now, if I would have got these from anybody else but him, I would have screamed that this was a counterfeit. I've never seen that before, okay? I just never seen that before. And it makes it interesting because the shafts that we're going to put in are parallel where these are taper tipped heads. So I had to go ream them out. Now, the reaming out presented a bit of an issue because you got to measure, you're trying to figure out, well, how deep is this, right? So let's do some simple math. If we know what the length of this is, and we go all the way to the bottom and subtract it, then we know what the depth of this is. So basically, I had to get to 2.5 inches of insertion from right here. And that's what I did. I marked the reamer at 2.5 inches, and each one of them got 2.5 inches. So it doesn't matter, I'm getting down to the bottom no matter what. And I did. So that was that. Now, we did some weighing on them, and the 6, 7, and 8 were light. All right. These clubs are coming a little bit lighter now as a standard because I don't believe the original, D4 is not necessarily an option anymore. Closer to D2 to D0, all right? D2 if you're using like steel, and D0 if you're using graphite. And then, so we're using graphite, so we're going for D0. So what are we putting in these guys? Larry did some testing with his buddy in the fitting category, and they came up with a KBS Max Graphite 75. That guy, okay? It's a neat little paint scheme from white with the red. I think that's a really good color combination, by the way. And then it gets into the black with some more stuff, and then all the way down. All right, it's a 40-inch, it's a 40-inch shaft, and the website warns about tip trimming and butt trimming, okay. But they also do come in a taper-tipped version as well. So you get them in discrete lengths, and you put them in, you cut them in length, boom, you're done. Larry preferred this model, and it was so that I could frequency match them. And that's what we're doing, and right now we're in the middle of getting it done. It's really quite nice. So what is this for? All right, this is a bit of a new item too. From a KBS point of view, Mr. Braley really flexes something that he really didn't like. He made shafts in this particular category for swing speed. All right, and if you go look, this is for in an iron shaft right around that 77 mile per hour swing speed. There's a range, and I believe 77 was the top end. Now, the idea here is to maximize the transmission of energy from the golfer to the golf ball through the golf club using this transmission right here, and to get the ball airborne. Okay, this is its mimic profile is after the KBS 80 Max in steel, and that's what that's for, right? It's to get the ball airborne. It's a little soft in the butt, and it brings the whole entire shaft around in order to get you some air. And as a whole, if you're trapping it well, you actually get a little bit of spin. So it should feel pretty good. And the graphite, I think the balance on this guy is pretty good. There's a lot of, if we go to the middle here, I think we're right there. We're pretty close. There we go. Well, right there. So that's where it's at on the shaft, right by the Max label, right? And we see about that much there, about that much there. Maybe just a touch to the upper end. Not too bad. So it's going to feel pretty good when it goes through the club. And so the way that they have it at 75 is for the 75 gram shaft. Now he sent some extras for me to weight sort through, which is really smart. I have all of them are the same weight within 1/10 of a gram. So that's pretty good. And thank you, Larry, because that was a smart idea, because the remaining ones were not, right? And that's just one more, way to make things that more consistent. We weighed the grips out, and the grips are all within 1/2 of a gram, so I can use any one I want. So that's going to work out well. So what do we need to do? Well, we've weighed them. We've weighed all our stuff, so we know what we have there. I've reamed out all the heads, so now that we all have the same insertion depth, and so it will accept that particular shaft. Now it's a matter of dry fitting / frequency matching. Now you go, Jim, what about the flow and the spine and the flow? You'd be correct. All right. Well, this KBS has always come up with, they've already put some spine lines on there that I tend to go with. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. 95% of the time they work. And that's what I use. And so far, it's funny. I've done a 5 and I've done a 6. One did, one did not. So that the logos will be a little bit different as they go down. Larry didn't care so much for that. He doesn't mind where the logo goes. So that's what we're doing next. We're staying with the trimming instructions at 1.5 inches at the 5 iron, and then 1/2 inch increments from there till we get down to the 9, and the pitch, they're both the same. Why do we do that? It's because you run out of tip. You're just going to run out of tip, and that's the length of this. And at that particular point, you know, if you did, it would feel terrible. So that's where we're going to get down to that particular point. So I got to get some tip weights. Okay, let me get some tip weights, and then we will make one of these clubs, so you can see how we built them. And then we don't have any ferrule finishing because they're metal ferrules, so the rest of it will be grip. So let's go put together a club. All right, I got all the clubs frequency matched, and they're all within at least one cycle of each other, which turned out to be very, very well. I got everything flowed. Flowed is flatline oscillation. And no, they're not all in the same spot, and that's the reason why we do this. Now I do have them in the right spot. I have the weights where I need them to be. Now we just have to put them together. So what's that entail? That entails using my 1x42 belt and roughing up the graphite shaft. Now when we do this, you know, they're like, oh, you really got to rough it up. No, you don't. And steel maybe a little bit more because you're trying to get through the chrome plating. However, you just need to make the exterior rough enough that it has something for the epoxy to bond to. So most people say just take the paint off, and I would agree with that. Just enough to get that first layer of paint off, and that's it. Now you know, I've cleaned up all my 1x42s over here, blew them out in the whole 9 yards, and I have new belts. So you have to be really, really delicate when it comes to doing that, because you can really tear through some graphite when you're using, I believe it's 100 grit. Even using 100 grit, you can really get through it pretty fast. I'm basically going to rough them up, get them ready to go, and then we're going to use the glue. And I do, and you get everything you want done in advance when you get ready to use this glue, because when you use glue that has a shorter cure time, that means there's less clubs that you can work with, and 6, 7 is the magic number. So we got to get everything set up the way we want it, and then get it into the club and let her dry. So let's go do that. All right, we're into day 2 of the build, and it's for Larry, the Taylormades, the 790s with the KBS 75s, and the Pro DTXs. And the DTXs are basically like a truck tire with grip. They're very, very aggressive, and they're made of a really good rubber. So it's a good choice. So everything as you saw went together. It went together very, very well. The frequencies within the 1 CPM range. Larry wanted a D0 swing weight, and we've talked about D0 in the past. With the clubs, the club heads being very light, that required extra weight. With the shafts being under 120, that was going to add even more weight to be added, and it's just beyond the capabilities of what's available out there. Now, if I was to add a whole bunch of weight just for the sake of adding weight, these things would feel like sledgehammers, and I would have to cut off a whole bunch of, well, tip section in order to get to the frequency that we wanted. That's not what it is. What Larry was interested in was the feel. Now, he sent me a video of his swing, and Larry is of the time period where you came from the inside, you were really smooth, and you came through and you hit it. And I'm sure his preferential shot shape is like a baby draw. So Larry's preferential shot shape would be a take it out and draw it back in kind of shape, just from the way he's looking. Now, he was also very, very smooth. When you have those two combinations going on, something that is a little bit lighter, taking into account his speed, right, taking into account the way he's releasing into the club, that the shaft that he selected is actually very, very good. But the idea of getting to a particular swing weight in mind is something that is more feel-oriented than actual specification-oriented. So I did add some weight, I just didn't add a whole bunch because I didn't want this thing to feel gross. So it will feel good. It will feel like you can detect the head in it. It's just not going to be to that specification. And if you go and you look at the OEMs, when you talk about these types of shafts or these types of heads and you put in lighter shafts, they tell you the swing weight, the swing weights will be into the C's, not into the D's. So we've got to take that into account. We've got it all glued, as you can hear that. And now we're going to cut them, we're going to grip them, we're going to bend them, we're going to wax them, and then we'll show you the final build when it's all done. So let's get to work. All right, finished the last bit of the club build for Larry, and we got to talk to Larry about the build itself because he had a couple of questions, and so did I. and we worked it out. Larry's a very cordial individual. Thank you very much, Larry. We were talking about flex and making sure it was the right one and going through the data that he gave me and why we picked what we picked. And we talked about swing weight and obtaining a swing weight. He wanted the D0, and I thought, well, we're never going to get that. I ended up getting a C8, C9, which when you're talking about this is going to be very close, right? Because the feel factor, and that's what I was telling him, that the feel factor is going to be there, and that was the important part about it. Now again, Larry 71 now has just a very, very fluid swing, very, very, you know, of the day swing, inside out, very right up and through, and these guys are going to help him get where he needs to go. They turned out very, very well. Happy with the Pure grips and the DTX. The DTX is a very aggressive grip, so you really don't have to squeeze very hard in order to get it. The KBS Max, the KBS Max 75, turned out very, very well. I'm very happy with that. And then the one thing that kind of surprised me that at the very beginning were the metal ferrules. And the metal ferrules being part of the head, I almost thought that they might be counterfeit. And he said he got them from a reputable place, so there you go. What I did was because they had this machine appearance to them, once I got done and got them all cleaned up, I put them on the Glanzwatch wheel and gave them a high polish, so they really do look like a ferrule now. And they have a really good look. So all in all the specs came out where we want, and they're going to be shipping out early so that he can have them for his golf trip. So if you got any questions or if you need any build help or anything like that, you know, shoot us an email, clubmaker@mcgolf.net or mcgolfshop@roadrunner.com. That's the better one of the two. And if you get outside your depth, you can just email us with, you know, with what you got and what it would, you know, take to fix you up. And as always, guys, let's see your scores go low.